It is, but, there's always going to be someone on one side or the other that's always going to oppose something about a nominee.
Mm.
I mean, there's not a single appointed office or position that is held that did not go without some type of, disagreement or opposition. I mean, heck, not everybody wanted Bob McDonald to be in charge of the VA.
I'm one of those.
Not everybody. Well, there's many more now that he's actually in the appointed position. But when it comes to appointments, that's why these hearings are so important.
Yeah, I can see that. Get it out there and get those questions, asked and everything. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So moving along here, we've only got about a half hour left. Because that's the development of the Supreme Court. I mean, this is something they're going to fight about from here until the election. I do kind of have a feeling that eventually the Republicans will back down because that's typically what they've done. But we'll see if they can stand their ground on it. Let's move to some national security type issues. Once again, these are the things to me that highlight the importance of getting the right leadership in there, getting somebody who can deal with crises of magnitude, of global magnitude. And what's one that I talk about all the time? Well, that's Russia and China. Whole big slew of things. I'm not going to go down that road entirely. I am going to do a piece tomorrow on the moves that Russia's making right now with Syria. I don't have time to do it today, but I've got some really good things I want to point out in the way that, because you may have seen the news, Russia has started to pull out their troops from Syria. I'm gonna give you guys a rundown on that whole situation tomorrow and show you why I think it's going that route. But that's for tomorrow. Today I want you to take a look at this story here from the Free Beacon. Air Force General John Hyten, who's the commander of the Air Force Space Command, kind of an important job, is pointing to China and Russia, saying that they are preparing to attack and disrupt critical U.S. military and intelligence satellites in a future conflict through space missiles, maneuvering satellites to block signals, and through laser attacks. If this came from anybody else, you might be thinking, oh, this is just somebody wearing their tinfoil hat. But this is the guy that's in charge of this kind of stuff. This is a pretty serious charge. You think of
like the peaceful protest that we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times these situations slip through the cracks and the media focuses on more things that can be sensationalized when situations such as this need to be brought to the American people first and foremost, because this is a big deal.
Oh, it's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And, it just, I'm not even going to get into this article in depth here, because it's just one more thing that we have to consider. And, when I look for leadership, this ability to work and face these issues is so ridiculously serious. And I'll highlight it all tomorrow when I show you the moves that I believe Vladimir Putin is doing, because this next president is going to have to answer to that. And I'm looking at the chat thread now, and there's some posts going on here about about Donald Trump being a draft dodger. And April, you made the point that neither of us have actually come out and stated our support for any candidate right now. We have not openly endorsed anyone.
I just want our listening audience to understand, this was a conversation that Johnny Zero and I had months ago, months and months ago, and we both agreed that publicly we would never state who we personally supported or endorsed, because that would not be fair to our listening audience.
Yeah,
Conversations that we have is things that the media tries to take away or put on another candidate leads us to say, I can see where the support is building for X, Y, and Z because of A, B, and C. Right. But under no circumstances should any of our audience members feel like We are supporting a candidate, making it publicly known, and encouraging you to do so. Our only goal is to bring you as much information as we can, firsthand, accurate information, and encourage you to make your own decisions.
Right. And really that's 100%, what it's about. And it's just so important for you guys and gals out there listening to make up your own mind. I'm giving you information. I do give my opinion on things, but I always put that caveat in there that ultimately it's you in that voting booth, and you got to vote for what's best for you, your family, for the country, for everything. And the more information we get out there, the better. Now, the article that was posted, it has to do with, the fact that Donald Trump never served in Vietnam, despite being in that, the age range and everything. I do not know this source, so I can't really get into the total validity of it. But it's a point that's been made, several times. The fact that, he got deferments, from the draft and everything. Now, I just want to say, as a warfighter, people getting deferments, in Vietnam doesn't really bother me so much. Assuming that they were legitimate and everything, because people got deferments for college, for health issues, the whole deal. And it's not like anybody, Trump or anyone else was the only person out there getting deferments. Okay, it happened to a lot of people. I have a bigger problem.
I just want to bring up that there's a difference between a candidate that we have now who legitimately got documented deferment as opposed to a president we've formerly had that took off to a different country.
Right. Or if you just want to talk candidates, I have a way bigger problem with Bernie Sanders' position during Vietnam than anybody else. He was a conscientious objector. So, I mean, if this
point that a lot of people, and once again, it's a media thing. The media doesn't draw attention to that, but they have made it a point to point out, Trump didn't serve and got deferments. Well,
and I recognize it, and I thank everybody for anybody who points that out. It is a valid thing to think about, and if it's important to you, make that decision there. But we got to look at everybody too, and again, like I said, because Kelly made a great point saying, I think military should be aware of who they want as a commander-in-chief. Because to me and a lot of warfighters, that title, commander-in-chief, is the most important aspect of being president. And, somebody who is a conscientious objector who, says, I can't serve because I don't believe in war, that to me is way more of a disqualification to lead our armed forces than anything else. Again, neither here nor there. It's something to look at. It's something to consider. But it did bring up a topic I forgot to earlier. Did you see the polls from military members and veterans on who you would support right now?
No, I did not see that.
Let me see if I can find it. The result of it was pretty much by a landslide Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders. I'm trying to find the poll right now. I don't remember who did it. But it's actually getting a decent amount of coverage right now. The Trump one I wasn't really surprised about. The Bernie Sanders angle I was a little surprised on because of his, again, his conscientious objector status and those extremely liberal leanings. I've got to find that poll again because it was surprising to me. Now, again, I hate polls, folks. I hate them. I think that the people who do them really have a lot more control over what gets the end result, just based on how they ask the questions and who exactly they talk to. But I only brought it up because of the topic we got on there. But yeah, a huge majority of the people in that poll that were military went for either Trump or Sanders. The only thing I can figure on the Sanders front is they couldn't stomach a vote for Hillary. They were Democrat and couldn't stomach a vote for Hillary. Because let's face it, there are there are Democrats, in the military. A lot of folks don't like to admit that, but we have everybody. That's why I talk about Warfighter Nation all the time. We've got a little bit of everything. There, Cindy posted up the article. Yeah, it was from Military Times. 931 active duty troops, reservists, and members of the National Guard. 26.9% went towards Trump, and 21.9% went to Sanders. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Again, I don't put a big stock in these polls and everything, and it really only 931 people. This isn't some massive poll or anything, but I did find this kind of interesting.
No, it kind of sounds like they stood outside in 80s one day.
Probably, they probably did. They actually probably did. And then they break it down by branch who goes for what. But yeah, I mean, by and large, Trump or Sanders. Ted Cruz was the next closest one at 16.7%. So I mean, it's this is all the more reason that we have to look at these things. Badger might have hit the nail on the head. He says, a lot of vets smoke weed for PTSD. He's saying it kind of jokingly, I think, but Sanders is the most pro legalization candidate, I believe, at least vocally, and that may play into this a little bit. Interesting, very interesting. I guess I was just surprised at Sanders being so high on that.
No pun intended.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
No, it's like, okay, so let's equate it to this. Mm-hmm. I've come across a lot of people in life in the last several years that just assume everybody in the military was in support of the invasion and in support of Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. That's not always the case. There are service members and current service members and veterans that did not agree with us going into Iraq. Mm-hmm. Heck, there's people, let's go back to Desert Storm. There's people that didn't agree that we were in Kuwait.
Right.
But that's not the point. The point is the military is a dichotomy of all beliefs, all religions, all colors, all types. But the difference is when you serve, mm-hmm. you understand what your higher calling and what your job is.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if lumping in, all service members are always for war. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not the case. You know this. I know this. Our listening audience understands that's just not the situation. Mm. But, it's almost as if you come across, a black conservative.
Yeah.
Well, why do we automatically assume that they vote liberal? Mm-hmm. How many black men and women do we know that are conservative? I know a ton.
Oh, absolutely.
So it just comes down to we've got to stop making automatic assumptions about all types of people in all types of situations.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. And since it was brought up, I do have to mention, we were talking about, veterans and medical marijuana and that. My state, here in, middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, we are on the cusp of legalizing medical marijuana. I do believe they're actually voting today, on that measure. What a brutal fight. Absolutely brutal fight. It actually got passed, over a year ago in the Senate. The House refused to do anything on it. It's been back and forth. It looks like it's finally going to pass the House. And then, of course, it's got to go back to the Senate because they're doing these amendments and crap. But we may have another state, stepping up with support for medical marijuana. And, Jamie signed off on the thread saying, weed isn't good for PTSD. It increases paranoia. A lot of studies are out there, and I've talked to a lot of people who absolutely swear by it, that it absolutely, saved their lives, in terms of, dealing with their trigger events and, day-to-day, things. I'd like to do another spotlight on that sometime. I know we had a guest on, this was like a year ago, talking about it, but I think it's time to take another look at that here in the near future.
Well, that was one of the reasons why I was at the Capitol yesterday working on veteran-related